It's growing. San Miguel is growing. That's what's happening here. And it's growing to an extent that the infrastructure of the community is having difficulty handling. Traffic. It's hard to believe there's traffic jams in San Miguel, but we have them here now. Driving downtown 1:30 until 2 when everybody splits for dinner from 2 to 4. They don't go to sleep, by the way. That's when the main meal is. For those of you that think Mexicans sleep half the day, they don't. They work a hell of a lot harder. They work a hell of a lot harder than any of us ever do. It's too big. Too many foreigners coming here with not enough respect for the local community and the local culture.
How is that evidenced?
Well, it manifests itself in many ways that are very, very subtle, and most people wouldn't even notice it, but it's looks you might get walking down the street. It's things mumbled under people's breath when you're out for dinner. Little things that most people are never going to notice. Unfortunately, I do. I've been here now for almost 18 years, and it's really changing. And most of the people that I know that have been here a similar length of time agree. It's too close to Texas. Not to badmouth all Texans, but some of the people that are coming down here come down here with a pronounced lack of respect, even dislike for Mexican people. And why they come here, I have no idea. Even though San Miguel is reported now to be the second most expensive city in Mexico in which to live, people are building $1 million homes here. Local folks can't afford to pay the rent anymore. Many subtle ways, many subtle changes.
How was it different when you came here?
A lot smaller, a lot less foreigners, certainly not so much traffic. And there was a feeling that if you weren't welcome, you were at least on the upper end of the tolerance level. And that the tolerance level is sliding now. We're no longer at the top end of the tolerance level. We're getting closer to the bottom end of the tolerance level, where folks just plain don't like you. They just as soon we all went away.
Mexican people.
Yeah, not the business people. Naturally, they want the business. They want to sell their products. But the folks in my neighborhood who are not businessmen and don't have stores downtown, I've been here long enough so that most of them talk to me the way they would talk to their neighbors, and they tolerate us at best. If half of us went away, they would probably be happier.
What are their gripes? Can you think of any stories that reflect that?
Oh, just a lack of respect for the culture. For instance, last year, a couple of ladies here, who I will have to leave unnamed, had a marriage for their little dogs in the main Jardine. Tacky, tacky, tacky. Why people would not understand that in a predominantly Roman Catholic country, a marriage is sacred, and you don't make fun of it by marrying your dogs and getting them all dressed up and having people troop into the main Jardine for this spectacle. The Mexican people, by and large, were appalled. A couple of gay ladies down here 3 or 4 years ago insisted on a big public marriage. That ain't cool in Mexico. Maybe cool in California or parts of Canada, but this is a very Catholic country, and we should go out of our way to respect that Catholicism. Whether we agree with it or not, it's none of our business. We live here and we should respect it at all levels. I spent a lot of time in Canada's high Arctic and subarctic. I spent 20 years in Yukon Territory. I was born in a little town called Parry Sound, Ontario, in the Muskoka region of Ontario, cottage country. Left home at 17, joined the Canadian Navy, got involved in their intelligence branch, so never went to sea. 12 years, gave up, got out. Got into broadcasting after I left and I worked for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation for a 14-year period. I decided another change was necessary. I went into mining exploration for about 6 or 7 years in Yukon Territory, where I spent 20 years and loved it. And then I came here.
Why San Miguel?
There's about 6 or 8 couples. We all hung around together in Whitehorse in Yukon Territory. And one of the couples came down here and really liked the town. I had never been here before. They came back to Whitehorse, proceeded to break up as it was. Then the male end of the partnership, who was a buddy of mine, came down here and bought the little house next door, phoned me one day and said, "The house next door is for sale. Have you got any money?" And I said, "Of course not." He said, "It's really cheap." So I got on Japan Airlines the next day, which was a Thursday, flew down here, arrived in Mexico City at about 2:15, arrived in San Miguel at 6:30, and bought the house at 7 o'clock, never having been here before. But being one of the most fiscally irresponsible people in the world, I knew that if I didn't do something with the little bit of money I had, I'd buy a second-hand convertible, chase some more girls, it'd be all gone, and I'd have nothing again. So I bought the house. What was my thinking? Boy, oh boy. I just need a need for a change. A need to, you know, I think if you're going to stay young throughout your life, you have to do different things. When your mind starts to go a little bit stagnant, whether for a geographic reason or an intellectual reason, you should pack it up and do something else, if you can. And that's what I did. I came down here, and I'm no worse off down here than I would have been up there. As a matter of fact, I might be living under a bridge up there. At least I have this little house. I have a small military pension. I have my Canada Old Age Security pension, and I have my other Canadian pension, which is adequate. You can't live high on the hog, but too old to chase girls now anyway, so what's the point? All I have to do is feed myself and pay my taxes and pay my electricity bill. And it's enjoyable.
What do you do in a typical day?
Well, typical day. Okay, I'm usually up about 7. I put on my first cup of coffee. I sit down in my bedroom where my television set is, watch the news on either the Mexican or the American channels that I have, and then putter. You know what puttering is?
I'm not sure.
Puttering is where you pick things up and put them down again, and you move this around, and you think, well, that looks better over there, and just puttering around. There's always something to do in a little house. Sweep the floor, mop the floor, do the dusting 4 times a day with the dust here. Well, there always seems to be something to do. Drive downtown, have a beer with the boys in one of the little palapas, and I don't know, there always seems to be something to do. I'm not inactive, but if you asked me to pin down what I did yesterday, I'd say, gee, I don't know, I'm not sure. In my country of Canada, and probably your country of the United States, we have to be kind of leery of most teenagers these days. I mean, they get into the damnedest things, and things that when we were kids we'd say, what is wrong with kids these days? Well, the teenagers in this community were just being born when I was here. So they've grown up with this old Canadian here. And I've never had a speck of problems, nothing. With the neighbors, get respect from the kids that go by to school. Hola, señor, ¿cómo estás? You know, there's just no problems. Treat people with respect, you're going to be respected. That's as simple as that. And I like the fact that this fraccionamiento, Insurgentes, is a working class neighborhood. There's nobody puts on airs around here, or I wouldn't live here, to tell you the truth. There are a lot of people here that try to help folks. We do the same thing in our own culture. If somebody's really down and out in the neighborhood and they need help, most people will pull together, and maybe even unknown to that family will throw a few bucks here, a few bucks there. And a lot of people down here, a lot of foreigners do that. They'll help the needy family 2 or 3 doors up the street with a bit of extra food, maybe buy uniforms for the children so they can go to school, maybe pay for the school for that year. Just help in small ways, and that's what I do, along with many, many, many other people here in San Miguel. Because quite frankly, the Mexican government doesn't do very much to help its own. It's getting better, but there's a long way to go. Sometimes there can be a problem where you give a little bit too much, and then it becomes expected that you will just give more and more and more. And old pensioners like me just don't have money to give more and more and more. But if you're not careful, that can happen. You can end up being used, which is not a nice feeling. So, you know, but once you start something, you can't just say, okay, that's it, no more help. Well, adapting to San Miguel over time is simply a matter of being observant, in my opinion. Just watch what's going on around you. Watch what people do. Watch what people say. And don't step on their toes. For heaven's sakes, don't make fun of something they do because it's a part of their culture. I'm not a particularly religious person, but every time most Mexicans walk by a church, they cross themselves, and they're very religious people. I don't happen to be, but I certainly respect the fact that they are. The way traffic. Don't expect traffic to behave the way you do in Los Angeles or Denver or Toronto or Whitehorse. Don't expect people to stop at a stop sign. And don't you stop at a stop sign unless you want to be rear-ended. Just little things like that just, I really have no desire to go back there. I love Mexico. I'm probably, friends of mine down here will say that I'm sometimes too critical of Mexico, but that criticism is out of a deep felt love for the country and the people. You know, you can't, when you see something that's desperately wrong, you are desperately wrong if you don't at least notice it and try to do something about it. It's there. Somehow get it fixed, even if all you can do is talk about it being there.
What bothers you most about the Mexican character or the Mexican politics? You know?
I wish they'd take a little bit more care with the environment. 2 weeks ago, every year, and it happened again 2 weeks ago in Mexico City and in Guadalajara, they had a serious rainstorm. And they had water 3 feet deep everywhere. Businesses flooded, homes flooded, and it happens every year. And one of the people from the department that looks after that in Mexico City was on camera, again, a man about 60, saying, since I was a kid, this has happened. Because people throw all of their garbage in the street, and it washes to the storm sewers. The storm sewers plug up with plastic bags, and we flood every year. And it still happened again this year. It'll happen again next year. But it's improving. Drive from here to the city of Querétaro, 45 minutes from here. And the first thing you notice when you're driving into that city, there's no garbage on the road. There's no plastic bags in the gutter. It's clean. There are industrial parks instead of industrial businesses in the middle of residential areas. It's a beautiful city. So Mexico's changing. It's changing, but it needs to change a little bit quicker as far as the environment is concerned. Corruption, it's part of the system. You know, what can you do when it's been there for so long and it's still there? I don't like racism, which exists here. I wish that could change.
How does racism exist here?
The darker your skin, the harder you have to work to rise above your birth. It's very, very difficult. The lighter-skinned Mexicans are the better off Mexicans. They're the ones that get to go to university. The darker-skinned Mexican Indian people, the indigenous people, are the servants. They're the people that sweep the floors and do the dishes and do your kids' laundry. And you pay them a pittance every week, enough so they can buy tortillas and beans. And that bothers me. It's very close to the caste system that is not supposed to exist in India but does. Let me give you an example. A number of years ago, I bought a young Mexican girl, in the family, a white sweater. She's a dark-skinned indigenous girl, native Indian Mexican girl. Beautiful sweater, and she never wore it. About 3 months later, I said, you never wear that sweater, don't you like it? And she said, yeah, it's beautiful. I said, you never wear it. She says, I can't. And I said, why? And she said, soy morena. I'm dark.
I don't understand.
It's a white sweater. She's darker with a white sweater. Yeah.
What are the things you like best about the Mexican character?
Oh, friendliness, generally speaking. It's not an openness particularly. To me, I like their sense of family. I really like their sense of family. But that works to a detriment as well. A gathering of Mexicans will be on a Sunday at a fiesta, 25 or 30 people. They'll all be family. And in our society, a backyard barbecue, maybe your brother's there or somebody else is in town, but it's mostly neighbors or maybe workmates and people you know. Here it'll all be family. Very, very few people outside of the family will be at that gathering. But the detrimental aspect of that is there's no real exchange of information around the community. The backyard barbecue in Denver, everybody's having a steak. Oh, what's the problem with that darn street down there? Why don't they fix it? I don't know. Why doesn't somebody phone City Hall and get something done about it? So you've got the whole neighborhood involved in that conversation. Here it's only one family. And they don't care. That's somebody else's job. The walls, if you'll notice in Mexico, the wall of my house goes right to my property line. Right to the property line in all 4 sides. Now, what's important to Mexican people is what's inside those walls. What's outside those walls is somebody else's problem. That's what they pay taxes for. You fix it, government. That's your problem. That's your property. This morning, as a matter of fact, school is starting on Monday, and I live across the street from a kindergarten. One of the little guys threw an empty plastic pop bottle over the fence of the school and onto the street. I went over and picked up the pop bottle in front of 3 or 4 parents and handed it back over the fence to him, and it said, Niño, no más basura en la calle, por favor. And he said, oh, lo siento, and took the bottle back. I said, don't throw any more garbage in the street. He said, oh, lo siento. But he never thought of it. Nobody's ever told him not to throw garbage on the street. That's the problem. When school starts, I'll be out there every morning picking up garbage on my street. I've mentioned to the maestros, the teachers in the kinder, why don't you talk to the children and ask them not to throw garbage on the street? Cleanliness is next to godliness if it's a Catholic country. Why don't you impress that on the children? Oh, no, that's a job for the parents. So, no, what do? You mind your own business. A bit of advice that I could give to anyone who might come down here and think that they can learn a new language quickly and easily, forget it. You're not. Once you're past a certain age, you have to work a lot harder than I want to work to learn the language. I get by, but there's no way that I can carry on a conversation with a Mexican friend of mine if he wants to talk about what his in-laws did in Celaya the other day when they went to buy some plumbing fixtures for their new house. I'm lost. I can go into a restaurant and order a meal without the guy sending me down the street to get my carburetor tuned. That sort of thing. But fluent, no. It's tough. Well, the other problem is there's so many gringos here that you don't have to learn the language. Your social life is with other gringos. Because, as I pointed out, the family thing, The togetherness of families is one thing, and socializing, well, you don't socialize very much with Mexican folks, you know, especially now that I live single down here now. That also cuts into your social life because, you know, married women never did like single men, never did like their husbands hanging around with single men. And I think it's still the same, no matter how old they get. Mexican men are macho. A little bit brusque at times, a little bit, you know, get away. That's my, you know, there's a lot of that macho stuff when it comes to male-female things. Mexican women are just lovely, smart, pretty, sensitive. What women in Canada used to be like. They're not anymore. I've never been a thing person. I've got to have more stuff. What the hell for? I think as long as you have enough in your belly and you've got your health and, you know, a library and music you like to listen to and some friends to have a beer with once in a while, that's, to me, that's a good standard of living. Standard of living to me isn't 6 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, and 4 acres of lawn that you hire a Mexican illegal to mow. What distinguishes me from a tourist would be the fact that I live here. The same thing that would distinguish me from a tourist coming to my hometown of Parry Sound. I live in Parry Sound, and people come to visit, and they take in the theater, and they go to the best restaurants, and they say what a beautiful town this is, and it is. Where I live here and take it for granted, I don't go out for dinner. You know, the same way I didn't go out for dinner when I lived in Vancouver or when I lived in Whitehorse. Not very often anyway. You eat at home. But the tourists that come up, they go out for dinner. They keep the restaurants going, the hotels going, which is good. But me, I just live the same way I would live anywhere. People that live here live here. There's, you know, if you're visiting, oh wow, look at this, look at the history there, look at that beautiful architecture, look at that fantastic church. After a while, it's like anywhere, you know. Yeah, it's a beautiful church. It's been there for 18 years. 3 or 4 years ago, I took a woman from Missouri to Querétaro. She'd just moved in, her and her husband. She wanted to buy some material. I drove them over there. She came storming out of the store. I asked them what I wanted. They just looked at me like I was stupid. And I said, well, Jane, did you ever think of maybe trying a word or two of Spanish? And she said, quote, unquote, why should I speak Spanish when there's so many Americans around here? If you work in a store, you should speak English, quote, unquote. And I know it's a quote because I'll never forget what she said. I was appalled, but she's not alone. You know, if you were invited to a party and there was going to be 100 people there, and you knew 10 of them were going to be complete idiots, you wouldn't go to the party. But only 10% of them are idiots. Well, it's the same here. You know, 90% are great folks, do a lot of wonderful things in the community, but 10% is a lot of rotten apples in a barrel. So they spoil it real quick. For everybody. North America to me is too rich, too insulated, too much of everything. Just too much. And I'm not a socialist. I think that capitalism is the only way to conduct an economy. But there has to be a balance. When the gap continues to grow, then it's not going to be too long before snooty Canada and uppity United States are going to find out that, whoops, we missed the boat somehow. A lot of people do a lot of good work in this community. You know, there's an organization here called Feed the Hungry. A gentleman a few years ago, quite a few years ago now, was in a situation where he saw a real need. The poverty is, you don't have to go 1.5 miles from where we're sitting right now to see poverty that you won't believe. Anyway, he decided to do something about it. He started a program called Feed the Hungry. And they were going to the little schools in the outlying areas in the Campo and providing a good meal every day for the children. Well, I don't know how many meals a day they provide now. It's in the thousands. They hire local women to do the kitchen work. It's just a wonderful, wonderful organization. Completely self-contained here in San Miguel, except for people that are now giving from other areas, but all locally done by one guy. Wonderful work. You know, it averages out as a pretty nice place to be. You know, just respect where you are, respect the people that own this country. And don't come down here with an idea that you're somehow superior, because you're not. You never were. I don't have any health care in Canada at this point, and I don't have any problems with Mexican health care or Mexican doctors. Lots of friends that have had medical problems down here and been wonderfully treated in the Mexican system. The way the healthcare system here works, most of the hospitals have their own health care programs. They'll have their own insurance program. So for instance, if I wanted to be insured at the hospital in Querétaro, I would go over there and buy their insurance. Or if I wanted to be insured in the hospital in San Luis Potosí, I would go there and buy their insurance. But it's very, very good and economical. You know, top-notch equipment, top-notch doctors. Many of the doctors here in San Miguel have trained in Canada and the United States and Great Britain. Oh yeah, I have no problems with the healthcare here at all. The only thing that I would say to an extranjero, a foreigner, coming down here to retire, or to go to any foreign country to retire, don't think you're going to fit in immediately. Don't think you're going to pick up the language, because you're not. And remember that when you arrive in a community like San Miguel, you're arriving in a small town. There's 110,000 people, they say, here in San Miguel now, and there's about 6,000 or 7,000 foreigners. Well, that 6,000 or 7,000, that is the size of your town. Because the rest of them, that's a different culture, and that's something that you are not a part of. And no matter how hard you try, you're not ever going to really be a part of that culture. So your community here is 5,000 or 6,000 people. Now, we all like to say that the world is a lovely, tight-knit, friendly little place. It isn't. It's a barbaric cesspool. And it's going to be a barbaric cesspool for the life of my grandchildren. We're changing poco a poco, pero to say that this is a big, wonderful world and all people are equal, that's a crock. So, we've worked very, very hard in our societies at keeping people unequal. If you want to come here and get along as well as is possible, pay as much attention as you can to what's going on around you and learn from it. You're not going to find it in books. You're going to find it in the way people act in restaurants toward you. You're going to find it in what happens when you walk into a store to buy a screwdriver and you don't know what the name is in Spanish. Little things, pay attention to those things, you'll get along fine.